to go back a second, I thought there was a good point brought up about Journey. And like music that makes a comeback, and like with the Fleetwood Mac example blowing up on TikTok. And so, it's a lot of things happening at once, right? There's like, it has to be like the right video, the right moment, the end of the right show. There's all these like pieces. And that's like, okay, that's built in here. But the selection for the music, what we see is like, there's a really kind of well-known study in our field in music cognition by Krumvansl, who was kind of like one of the founders of music cognition from Cornell. It's called Cascading Reminiscence Bumps. And what this was is the idea that you have this reminiscence bump over about 25 years where the music or certain elements of the music that was popular 20 to 25 years ago makes a comeback. We often think of that as like retro, or we say like, hey, the 80s are back now, or the 70s. Yeah, the psychedelic, the hippie music came back, and then the 80s music with the synths. Now 90s, like Metallica, Nirvana are huge. I was on the beach like during the summer, and I heard a group of 18-year-olds. They were talking about how like no one loved Metallica more in the world than they did. And like the kid was like 18 years old, and I'm like, oh man, like. Yeah, okay, great. You think that, but like, this is the second time around. Like, there are people who grew up with Metallica, who went to like all those shows and have been with them forever. And I think that just like shows this phenomenon, and it makes sense. In a way, it's like, okay, it's like the music from that time. In a way, that becomes familiar to a generation by being played in the house by parents, and having that early exposure, and like you start to combine, like these musicians have also been.
It's not just music though. I mean, it shows too. I mean, Google did that with Home Alone through some of their ads in the last year.
Exactly. It's not just music.
It's interesting, and so it has to be all of these features, if you will, all these elements have to hit at the same point. I mean, I was shocked to kind of consume some of the research on Lil Nas X about 18 months ago, that he basically made it big because of TikTok. And I'm not certain that there is anyone who's done it as big since. I mean, maybe The Weeknd in That Dance, but like he was already someone. For someone to go from nothing to someone as big as what's the song called? Old Town Road.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty interesting that he was able to do that, become such a sensation. Because of a platform like that. I mean, but in 25 years, that song will come back and it'll do exactly what you're saying. And it'll be interesting to see Billy Ray Cyrus, like 95 years old, cruising down the street in his Maserati or whatever, I guess. But
and the reason, there's so much to unpack. There's so much to unpack there.
There is, but that's what's interesting in it, because people think that there's like this, I don't know, secret formula, and maybe there is, but there is a luck aspect in that too, I think. Right.
I think so too. But there's a probability. So I'll unpack that a little bit. So there's a probability of things happening. So the fact that things are blowing up on TikTok is a phenomenon of like TikTok, growing and just like having more and more users than ever, and having it be a method that like their algorithm is better in terms of like finding you video content and short snippets of things that are really going to resonate with you. It's not like Lil Nas X didn't become big because of TikTok. Lil Nas X became big on TikTok, which is a very different thing. And it's a question that I get asked all the time, and like an interesting use case is to say, how will this song perform on TikTok, or what's going to be the next kind of breakthrough thing on TikTok? It's really, people are asking, this is where it's happening, so I'm laser focused on this platform. If I were to take Lil Nas X,
are you saying the platform, the musician, the performer doesn't matter? They will figure out
they have to be stage. Of course, they have to be on the stage and understand how to generate that content. But I could read a blog and tell you how to make a good TikTok video in a minute. But what's not told in that video is what content will be in there that will be enjoyed the most. So Lil Nas X is like, first of all, a very interesting cultural figure for this moment in time.
Sure.
Just everything that's happening socially, in terms of like, gender fluidity and boundaries, and like, is this, and the fact of where he came from is also like, this is a true story of like this underdog rising. So that's like this explicit knowledge of something culturally that's happening. That's the familiarity, right? And to me, the surprise was at that point in time was taking hip hop and rap music and combining it with country music, like almost in a way that hadn't been done before, with like drum samples and triple
And
beats,
slightly
like
frowned
hip-hop.
upon in many situations. I mean, he was at many country live shows I've seen, and like people are just like not into it at all. Like, and then vice versa, when the country aspect of it goes into a rap show, like people are like, what is this? Like, it's interesting to see that. Yeah.
Right, but it's highly, in terms of, if you're now to think about the modeling that we do at Secret Chord and Dopr, if you think about, so genre is a key aspect of how we in these early days are making these models. So songs can belong to many genres, and when you look at past examples of songs in those genres and create your ideal windows of ideal levels of surprise, and then all of a sudden you have songs that clearly break those rules and show that for a country song, this rhythm and these timbres are very surprising. And for a hip hop song, this like acoustic guitar, right, is really like kind of out of nowhere and out of place. And that's like a moment of surprise and like of innovation that I think it's a great example. And then what you have is a lot of people trying to copycat this thing that was big, right? And this is generally the response. And this is like, you have people trying to make a country hip hop song, and maybe, that fizzles after a while because of all this copycat. And like maybe Old Town Road like is only the coolest song, whatever, for, a year. Right. But as you're saying, like maybe that song comes back in 20, 25 years, all those copycats are forgotten, right? And then the cream of the crop across eras remains a part of our culture. And like that's why the Beatles are still having influence today, and that's why that's why there's rock bands today who sound almost exactly like Led Zeppelin, and they're like, wow, like, because the cream of the crop over. This is why R&B bass lines from James Jamerson, from Stevie Wonder songs, why James Brown, like Prince, like all these. Oh, you can go through the decades and name the artists where like the cream of the crop had a constant influence, have a continuous evolving influence on culture, where people take, because as a creator, you're inspired by that music. When I was a kid growing up, you have, just because you're an artist and you have music that you love too, and like you're constantly taking that in, and I think stealing is the wrong word, but you are like inspired by certain elements of that music and try to consciously incorporate it into your writing process, like a sound that you heard or a feel from a song, and combine that with your other tools. And like it's almost like the creator and the listeners are going through this like process together and learning about these expectations from the music they hear about what sounds go together, except one person is taking that and kind of combining it very consciously into their creative process. Maybe some of it's unconscious too, but like, and are diligently working on making a sound that is theirs, that like makes sense off of like the music that they love. And the same thing is happening for the listener, except they're not creating it. They're kind of setting up and deciding their like structure of what it is about music that gets them off and that they really love, and they're looking for music that they can say, this is like this, I love this music. In it could even be as simple as like when I'm ready to party, here's the songs that I put on my party playlist that I know are going to deliver this. Or like, this is an amazing song when I'm like trying to have a romantic dinner with my wife, and I'm going to like bin them, or husband, I'm gonna bin them here. And like that's just like what we would use, and like what we can pull from is just like this cool process of like over time that we're constantly feeding off of each other as creators and listeners. And now more than ever, especially with like computers and things like GarageBand, some recent metrics that came out from the music industry about like how this like creator and listener relationship is really like transforming into there being more creators than ever, because I can open up some software and make songs on my computer like more easily. There's more interest in being someone who is making the music, who's also consuming the music, and it's like not as much of a stark distinction as the days when when you had to like, go to the store to buy a CD, and it was like really hard to find a music lesson or to learn how to like, now I can just go on YouTube. I say, hey, can I like learn basic music theory? And I could probably watch some videos in like a week and be able to sit down at like a piano and start to like play some chords for songs and like sing on top of them and record them. And that technology is really facilitated that
directly
process.
involved
I've been
within our
educated.
entrepreneurial community for years. And the most common question I get is, Tim, I want to get involved, but I don't know what events I should attend. Well, Startwheel eliminates that pain point because we consolidate all the events you should attend into a single calendar. Now you'll be in the know and see where to spend your time. Gone is the need to search multiple websites and calendars. Just head to startwheel.org and see for yourself. That's startwheel.org.